What's this? We had this 3 days ago. Have you no imagination? Busting my ass all week for this.
It didn't start like this, the abuse. At first, I didn't recognize it. I don't think anyone does. The beginning was intoxicating. He saw me, really saw me, in a way no one ever had. He'd listen for hours, memorize the small details, tell me I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. I felt like I'd finally found home. That was the first 3 months. Slowly it started. Pasta again! Not angry, just disappointed, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Later that night, when I tried to talk about it, he looked at me with genuine confusion. "What are you talking about?" I said, "Thank you. You're being so sensitive." I apologized. I don't remember why. I just remember feeling guilty for having ruined dinner. He said, "I never said that. You're imagining things. You're twisting my words. You always do this. You turn everything into an attack." Something would happen, a sharp comment, a forgotten promise, a mood that turned on a dime, and when I'd bring it up, the story would shift. I started keeping notes, not to use against him, just to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I'd write down what he said, what I said, how it ended. The next day, I'd read it back and think, that's not how I remember it. But I had it in writing. It was how I remembered it. He still got me to doubt. The words he used to twist, "If you hadn't texted me right when I was leaving, I wouldn't have gotten distracted. I'm stressed because you've been so needy lately. You should have reminded me. You made it such a big deal that now I feel like I can't do anything right." One night, after a fight where I'd cried and he'd stood over me, arms crossed, telling me I was too emotional and impossible to please. I asked, "Do you even like me?" He paused, then said with a strange calm, "I love you. I just don't like who you become when you're like this." I spent the next week trying to be less like that. Then, without warning, he'd be the man I fell in love with. He'd cook breakfast, hold my hand, tell me I was his everything. He'd apologize, vaguely, but it felt real in the moment. "I hate when we fight," he'd say. "I just get so overwhelmed. I'm working on it, though." I'd feel relief wash over me. See, he loves me. I was overreacting. Those days made me stay. They were oxygen. But the patterns always returned. He didn't like my friends, said they were coming between us. When I'd defend them, he'd sigh. "I'm only telling you because I care, but if you want to keep getting hurt, that's your choice." Slowly, I stopped reaching out. It was easier than the conversations afterward. My mom started to notice. "You seem sad," she said once. "Is everything okay?" I wanted to tell her, but when I tried, the words felt disloyal. I heard his voice. "You're twisting everything. You're making me the villain." So I replied, "Just tired." One Sunday afternoon, we were supposed to go to a friend's gathering. He came out of the bedroom and said he wasn't feeling well. Could we stay home? I said okay. 20 minutes later, he was on the phone with his brother, laughing, making plans for a golf game the next day. When he hung up, I asked, "I thought you weren't feeling well." He looked at me blankly. I wasn't, but that was different. I realized in that moment that I no longer trusted my own assessment of anything. I couldn't tell if he was lying or if I was the one misreading. I didn't know which version of him would show up from 1 hour to the next. I didn't know what I was allowed to feel. I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and sat on the floor. I wasn't sad. I was empty. I started seeing a therapist, secretly at first. I was afraid he'd find out. The therapist said 2 things that changed everything. "You're describing emotional abuse." I'd never called it that. I'd called it complicated and "I must be the problem." And "the reason you can't remember what's real is because you've been gaslit for years. You're not losing your mind. You're finding it." Leaving took 6 months, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. The day I left, he was calm. He told me I'd regret it. He told me I was throwing away the only person who'd ever truly loved me. He told me I was making a mistake. I said, maybe, but I need to make it. Healing hasn't been linear. Some days I feel clear and strong. Other days I still hear his voice in my head. You're too sensitive. You're impossible. You're the problem. But I'm learning to answer it. I'm not too sensitive. I was being treated poorly. I'm not impossible. I just have needs. I'm not the problem. The problem was a dynamic I didn't know how to escape. Now I have the journal, I have my therapist, I have friends again, real ones who don't need me to prove my worth. And I have something I didn't have before, trust in my own perception. If you're in this or something like it, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not too sensitive, you're not the problem, and you don't have to prove anything to anyone except yourself. Look around for useful resources. They are out there. One I found was The Drama Doctor. It really helped me. You'll find it on Etsy. I've left the link in the description. One truth at a time, one breath at a time. You'll find your way back. Be gentle on yourself and take care.